The crates were heavier than the manifest claimed. Daniel Reed wiped sweat from his forehead and checked the anti-grav settings again. Nothing wrong with the equipment, just another client who lied about cargo weight to save on shipping costs. He'd been hauling freight across the border stations for 3 years now, and the tricks never changed. Crest Point Market buzzed with afternoon activity. Vendors shouted prices in 6 different languages, the smell of grilled meat mixed with the sharp tang of fuel cells being recharged. Daniel maneuvered his loader through the crowd, aiming for the medical depot on the far side. Simple job: deliver the supplies, collect payment, grab something to eat, and head back to his ship. A child's scream cut through the noise. That Daniel's head snapped toward the sound. A small dragon, barely tall enough to reach his chest, scrambled backward between market stalls. Her scales shimmered deep purple and strain markings ran along her neck. 5 graph pirates moved toward her in a loose circle, blades drawn. Their gray skin and battle scars marked them as raiders. From the outer systems, the crowd scattered. Vendors abandoned their stalls. People ran in every direction, wanting no part of whatever was happening. Daniel saw a dead dragon lying near an overturned cart, presumably the child's guardian, based on matching armor colors. High value target confirmed. One of the graph growled into a comm device. Royal markings. The council will pay millions for her return. The child, Pyrrha, pressed her back against a wall. Her eyes were wide with terror. She couldn't have been more than 12 cycles old, too young to breathe fire effectively, too small to fight. That Daniel's hands moved before his brain caught up. He killed the anti-grav and jumped off the loader. His boots hit the ground hard. The graph were 10 meters away. The child was trapped. Every logical thought in his head screamed at him to run. These were trained killers. He was a cargo hauler with basic self-defense training from Earth's merchant marine. This wasn't his fight. This wasn't even his species. The smart move was to hide and let the station security handle it. His feet carried him forward anyway. Get away from her, Daniel said. His voice came out steadier than he felt. The lead graph turned. Confusion crossed his face, then amusement. A human. This doesn't concern you, freight worker. Walk away. No. The pirate's expression hardened. Then you die with her. Daniel positioned himself between the blades and the dragon child. He spread his arms wide, making himself as large a barrier as possible. Behind him he heard Pyrrha's rapid breathing, felt the heat radiating from her small body. Run, he said quietly, not taking his eyes off the graph. When they move on me, you run. I can't leave you, the child whispered. You can, and you will run and find help. The graph attacked as a unit. Professional, efficient, no wasted movement. Daniel had time to register the first blade coming toward his left side. He tried to dodge, but there were too many angles. The blade punched through his ribs. Pain exploded across his chest. The second blade took him in shoulder, the third in his abdomen. Daniel's legs buckled, but he locked his knees and stayed upright. Had to stay upright, had to keep blocking their path to Pyrrha. Fourth blade through his thigh. He felt his leg give out, but fell backward instead of to the side, still between the pirates and their target. Stubborn animal, the lead grass snarled. The fifth blade drove down toward Daniel's chest. Time seemed to slow. Daniel saw the blade coming, saw his own blood spreading across the market. Stones heard Pyrrha screaming, his last coherent thought was hope that she would run, that this would matter, that dying on alien soil far from Earth would count. For something, the blade struck home. Darkness swallowed him. Somewhere in the fading consciousness, Daniel heard the deep roar of engines overhead, heavy weapons fire, shouting in dragon tongue. The grass cursing and retreating, small hands gripping his arm. Please don't die. Pyrrha's voice seemed to come from very far away. Please, you saved me. Please don't die. Daniel wanted to tell her it was okay, wanted to say she should run while she could, wanted to explain that some things were worth dying for, even if he'd only known her for 30 seconds, but his mouth wouldn't work, his lungs wouldn't pull air. The world went black and silent. His last sensation was warmth, not the heat of his own blood, but something else. Something that felt like fire but didn't burn. Dragon fire maybe, or just his brain shutting down and feeding him comfortable lies. Either way, Daniel Reed stopped thinking about anything at all. The market of Crest Point fell silent except for the sound of armored boots hitting stone and a small dragon child crying over a human body that had taken 5 blades meant for her. Pain should have been the first thing Daniel felt. Instead, he felt warmth, gentle pressure across his chest and abdomen, the smell of something like cinnamon mixed with ozone. Soft light filtered through his closed eyelids, not harsh like station lighting, but amber and golden. His eyes opened slowly. The ceiling above him was pure crystal, reflecting patterns of fire light that danced and shifted, not regular flames, but something alive and controlled. The walls curved upward in a way that seemed impossible for normal architecture. Everything gleamed with polished stone and precious metals. Daniel tried to sit up. His body responded, which surprised him. He remembered blades, remembered pain, remembered dying. Easy, a voice said from his left. The healing membranes have done their work, but you need to move slowly. Daniel turned his head. A dragon stood beside what he now recognized as some kind of medical bed. This dragon was older than the child he'd saved, with deep green scales and kind eyes. She wore robes marked with healing symbols. Where am I? Daniel's voice came out rough. The Heart Citadel. The dragon said, I am Strand, chief healer of the Guardian Council. You are very fortunate to be alive. Daniel Reed. How do you know my name? Your identification was still in your pocket when the Guardian fleet brought you here. Strand moved around the bed, checking displays that floated in the air. You have been unconscious for 4 days while our technology repaired the damage. For days. Daniel looked down at himself. He wore simple white clothing, and through the thin fabric he could see the pink lines of fresh scars across his chest and stomach. 5 of them. He remembered each blade. The child, he said suddenly. Pyrrha, is she safe? Strand's expression softened. Princess Pyrrha is safe, healthy, and has not left the Citadel since the incident. She asks about you every hour. Princess, you saved the youngest daughter of the Dragon Sovereign Council. The assault on Crest Point was an organized kidnapping attempt by Grath mercenaries. They intended to ransom her for political concession. Strand paused. Her guardian died protecting her from the initial attack. You arrived during their final approach. Daniel processed this slowly. He'd thrown himself between professional killers and royalty. No wonder everything hurt. The Graph warriors he Asked 3 dead at the scene when the Guardian fleet arrived. 2 escaped but are being hunted across 12 systems. Strand's voice turned hard. They will be found. Those who harm dragon children do not escape justice. I just wanted her to run, Daniel said quietly. I didn't think past that, which is precisely why you are here instead of a standard medical facility. Strand gestured to the crystal walls around them. No non-dragon has entered the Heart Citadel in 3,000 years. These halls are sacred to our people, yet the Guardian Council vote unanimously to bring you here for treatment. I don't understand. Strand pulled up a chair and sat, which seems strange for someone who should be attending to medical duties. In our culture, guardianship is the highest honor. Those who protect our young are revered above all others. What you did, placing yourself between death and a child you had never met, resonates deeply with our values. I'm human. It doesn't mean the same thing, doesn't it? Strand tilted her head. You made a choice in a split second. No time to calculate odds or consider rewards. Pure instinct drove you to protect an innocent. That is the essence of guardianship, regardless of species. Daniel struggled to find words. He'd been a cargo hauler trying to make decent credits on border runs. Now he was apparently in the most important building of an entire civilization, being told his impulsive decision mattered on a scale he couldn't grasp. Your presence here has caused considerable debate, Strand continued. The Guardian Council is meeting as we speak to discuss what should happen next. What kind of debate? Whether to offer you something that has never been offered to non-dragon in all our recorded history. Strand stood smoothing her robes. But that discussion is not mine to have for now. You need rest and food. I will send attendants with a meal. She moved toward the doorway, then paused. Daniel Reed, you should know something. When the Guardian fleet arrived at Crest Point, their sensors detected Pyrrha's distress call. They expected to find her Guardian holding off attackers. Instead, they found a human body with 5 blade wounds, positioned perfectly to shield a terrified child. I failed, Daniel said. I didn't stop them. You absorbed every blade meant for her. The attack patterns show that without your intervention, she would have received all 5 strikes. Strand's eyes met his. You did not fail. You succeeded in the only way that mattered. The child lived. She left before Daniel could respond. He lay back against the pillows, staring at the crystal ceiling. His scars ocked his head spawn with information that didn't quite fit together. Princess, Guardian Council, Sacred Halls, 3,000 years. Because he couldn't watch a kid die. Somewhere deeper in the Citadel, he heard the sound of dragon voices raised in discussion. The debate Stram mentioned. Daniel closed his eyes and wondered what exactly they were deciding. About a human cargo hauler who'd made one stupid brave choice in a crowded market. The warmth of the healing membranes pulsed gently against his skin. And despite everything, Daniel drifted back into sleep. 2 days after waking, Daniel could walk without assistance. Strand cleared him for activity, though she warned against anything strenuous. The scars still pulled when he moved too quickly, reminding him of blades and choices that a guard arrived at his chamber that morning wearing ceremonial armor that caught the light. Guardian Council requests your presence. Daniel Reed, I am to escort you to the Chamber of Flames. Daniel had no formal clothes. He wore the simple gray tunic and pants that attendants had provided. Not exactly appropriate for meeting with what Strand had described as the most honored warriors in dragon history, but he had no alternative. The walk through the citadel took 20 minutes. Halls of carved stone gave way to corridors lined with murals depicting dragon history, battles, celebrations, moments of sacrifice. Daniel saw images of dragons shielding hatchlings from danger, standing against impossible odds, choosing death over abandoning their charges. The Chamber of Flames lived up to its name. 7 pedestals arranged a semicircle, each topped with fire that burned without fuel. Behind each flame sat a dragon whose scales bore the marks of countless battles. These were ancient warriors, Daniel realized, veterans who had survived what most did not. The center pedestal set the largest dragon, his scales deep slate gray. Daniel Reed. His voice resonated through the chamber. I am Slate, commander of the Guardian Council. You stand in a place of judgment and honor. Daniel's throat went dry. I'm just a freight hauler. I don't belong here. That is precisely what we are debating, said a white-scaled dragon. To Slate's left, I'm Frost. For 3,000 years, only dragons have stood in this chamber as candidates for guardianship. Your presence breaks ancient tradition. Yet tradition must sometimes bend to truth, countered a red-scaled dragon on the right. I am Cinder. I have reviewed the security footage from Crest 17 times. What I witnessed was guardianship in its purest form. Slate gestured and a holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber. Daniel watched himself jump from the loader position himself before Pyrrha spread his arms wide. The footage played in horrible detail, each blade striking his body, jerking with impact but staying upright, staying between the killers and the child. Pause here, Slate commanded. The image froze with Daniel on his knees, the 5th blade approaching. Notice his position even while dying. He is angled to maximize coverage of the child while minimizing the attacker's angles of approach. This is not random panic. This is tactical sacrifice. He had no training, Frost insisted, no understanding of our customs or values. He simply reacted. Exactly, Cinder said. He reacted with guardianship despite having no cultural framework for it. That suggests something inherent rather than learned. A blue-scaled dragon spoke up. I am Wave, youngest of the current Guardians. I trained for 20 years before earning this position. I studied combat strategy and the philosophy of protection. This human had none of that. Yet his actions demonstrate understanding that surpasses many trained warriors. Understanding and worthiness are different concepts, Frost said. We cannot grant guardianship based on a single act, no matter how noble. Can we not? Slate's eyes fixed on Frost. Every guardian here earned their rank through a defining moment. Choice when all other options were easier. We simply had the advantage of surviving long enough to repeat such choices. The chamber fell silent. Daniel stood still, not sure if speaking would help or hurt. These dragons were discussing his life like he wasn't there, but their words carried weight. Beyond simple debate, they were wrestling with something fundamental. Let the child speak, Wave said suddenly. Pyrrha was there. Let her testimony be heard. Slate nodded. A door at the side of the chamber opened, and Pyrrha entered. She looked so small among the massive guardians, her purple scales seeming to dim in the presence of such power, but she walked straight to the center and looked up at the council without fear. Honored guardians, she began her voice. Clear, my protector died for me. His name was Shield, and he gave his life, holding back the first wave of attackers. When the second wave came, I thought I would join him in death. Tears rolled down her scaled cheeks, but she didn't stop. Then a stranger appeared. Human I had never seen before. He didn't know me, didn't know my family or title. He just saw a child in danger and chose to stand between me and death. Princess Pyrrha, Frost said gently, your gratitude is understandable, but emotion should not dictate policy. This is not emotion. Pyrrha said firmly, this is witness testimony. Shield was trained his entire life to protect me. He did so with honor and skill, but Daniel, who had no training and no obligation, made the same choice Shield made. Does that not prove that guardianship exists beyond our culture? The question hung in the air. Daniel saw Frost's expression shift, doubt creeping into certainty. The human cannot speak our language fluently, another guardian said, cannot breathe fire, cannot fly. How can he fulfill guardian duties? Guardianship is not about ability, Slate said. It is about will, about the willingness to stand when standing means dying. He looked directly at Daniel. You were willing. You proved it with 5 scars. I didn't think, Daniel admitted. I just couldn't watch a kid die, and that, Cinder said, is the answer to every objection raised here today. He didn't calculate, didn't weigh options, saw innocence threatened, and responded with protection. This is guardianship stripped to its absolute core. Slate stood, and the chambers seemed to grow warmer. The council will vote, but first, Daniel Reed, you must understand what we are offering. Guardianship is not honorary. It is a binding oath that will change your life completely. You will be expected to train, to fight, and likely to die in service to our people. Do you understand? Daniel looked at Pyrrha, then at the ancient warriors surrounding him. I understand. Then we vote, Slate said. All in favor of offering Daniel Reed the rank of guardian. 7 flames burned brighter. 7 voices said yes. The guardian archives stretched further than Daniel could see. Shelves carved from stone held countless records, some physical scrolls, others crystalline storage devices that pulsed with inner light. The ceiling disappeared into shadows high above, and the air smelled of age and importance. Snorts, this is our history, Wave said, walking beside Daniel through the towering racks. Every guardian who has ever served is recorded here, their triumphs, their failures, and their deaths. Daniel ran his hand along a shelf, feeling the weight of centuries. How many have there been? 37, counting those who currently serve. You would be the 38th. Wave pulled a crystal from a nearby shelf. It glowed softly in her clawed hand. This is Shield record, the guardian who died protecting Pyrrha before you arrived. She placed the crystal on a reading pedestal. Images appeared in the air. Above it, a young dragon in training. Armor gradually aging through years of service, battles fought, children saved. Finally, a market square in Graph. Blades, he served for 43 years. Wave said quietly, saved 17 lives in direct combat, prevented 4 kidnapping attempts. He died doing what he trained his entire life to do. I can't replace him, Daniel said. No one is asking you to. Guardianship is not about replacement. It is about continuation. Wave returned the crystal to its place. Shield would have approved of what you did. Any guardian would. They walked. Deeper into the archives, Wave showed him records of guardians who had died in service. The numbers were staggering. Of 37 guardians throughout history, only 12 had retired alive. The rest fell in battle protecting charges they'd sworn to defend. This is what you're being asked to join, Wave said, stopping before a massive wall covered in dragon script. This is the wall of oaths. Every guardian's vow is inscribed here. Daniel, read the translations that appeared beside the dragon writing. Each oath was unique, personal, but they all contain the same core promise: to stand between danger and innocence, to choose sacrifice over survival, to serve until death claimed them. I'm not a warrior, Dana said. I hauled cargo between stations, basic self-defense training. Nothing more, yet you positioned yourself tactically while dying, Wave countered. Slate was correct about that. You maximized coverage while minimizing attack angles. That is not basic training, that is instinct or luck. Guardians do not believe in luck, Wave settled onto her hunches, bringing her eyes level with Daniel's. We believe in choice. Shield chose to fight 5 attackers to buy time for Pyrrha to escape. You chose to shield her with your body when she was cornered. Different methods, same choice. Why does it matter that I'm human? Daniel asked. Why is that significant? Wave was silent for a moment. Because dragons are raised with these values from hatching. We are taught that protecting our young is the highest duty. That sacrifice for others brings honor. That guardianship is sacred. Sounds reasonable. It is cultural programming, Wave said. Necessary and good, but programmed. Nonetheless, humans have no such programming. Earth is what the galaxy calls a death world. Your species evolved fighting for survival against predators, diseases, and your own planet's hostility. Logic suggests you should be the most selfish species in known space. We're not, though. No, you are not, and that fascinates the council. Wave stood and began walking. Again, humans save drowning strangers, run into burning buildings for people they have never met, throw themselves on explosive devices to save their companions. We have studied your history, Daniel. Read. Your species produces guardians without cultural framework for the concept. Daniel followed her through rows of records. You're saying we just do it naturally. We are saying that perhaps Earth's harshness created something unexpected. A species so familiar with death that you see preserving life as an act of defiance against it. We've stopped at a small alcove. This is what I wanted to show you. The memorial flame burned in a basin of carved crystal. Names floated in the fire itself, written in light that never faded. Daniel recognized this from the ceremony where the council voted. This was where fallen guardians were remembered. 25 names, Wave said. 25 guardians who died in service, some massive battles, others in quiet moments defending a single child from a single threat. All of them made the choice to stand. Daniel stared at the names. Each one represented a life ended too soon, a warrior who could have run, could have chosen survival but stayed and died instead. I don't know if I can do this, he admitted. I acted on impulse. At Crest Point, I didn't think about oaths or honor or any of this. I just moved, and that is precisely the point. Wave said. Guardianship at its core is not about thinking, is about being the kind of person who moves toward danger. When innocence is threatened, You proved. You are that person once. I did it once. Once is enough to reveal character. Training will handle the rest. Wave turn. To face him fully, the council is not offering this lightly. They know you lack combat skills. They know you are unfamiliar with our culture. They know that accepting you breaks 3,000 years of tradition. Then why offer it all? Because 25 guardians are dead, and we need to understand what drives beings to make that sacrifice. You made it without understanding our culture, without training, without obligation. Wave's eyes reflected the memorial flame. If we can understand why humans do this, perhaps we can learn something about the nature of guardianship itself. Daniel looked at the flames, at the names of the fallen. His scars ached beneath his shirt. 5 lines that marked 5 blades. 5 times he should have died. What if I fail? He asked quietly. Then you will join those who came before you, Wave said. But failure in guardianship is not cowardice or defeat. Failure is simply the price of standing when others run. The decision chamber was smaller than the chamber of flames, more intimate. Only Slate and 2 other council members attended. Frost sat to his left, Cinder to his right. Daniel stood before them, no longer a patient recovering from wounds, but a candidate being evaluated. The council has voted to offer you guardianship, Slate began. But before you accept or refuse, you must understand why your humanity matters to us. Not just that you are human, but what that means in the context of what you did. Frost spoke next, her white scales catching a light. I voted yes, though tradition argued against it. I need you to understand my reasoning because it reflects the council's collective conclusion. All right, Daniel said. Dragons are raised from hatching with specific values. Frost explained. Duty, honor, sacrifice, protection of the young. These are not suggestions. They are fundamental to our society. Every dragon knows that guardianship is the highest calling. We are programmed culturally and socially to revere those who protect. So when a dragon becomes a guardian, they are fulfilling cultural expectations. Cinder added. Noble, yes. Difficult, yes, but expected within our framework. Slate leaned forward. Humans have no such framework. Your species evolve on a planet that try to kill you at every turn. Predators, diseases, natural disasters. Earth is rated as a Class 7 death world. Only the most aggressive and survival-focused species should emerge from such places. We're pretty good at surviving, Daniel admitted. You are excellent at it, Frost said. Yet, your history is filled with examples of humans who chose not to survive, who sacrificed themselves for strangers, who ran toward danger instead of away from it. This should not exist in a death world species. Daniel thought about that. Earth was harsh, no argument. Humanity had clawed its way to the top of the food chain through intelligence and cooperation, but cooperation required caring about the group, not just the individual. Maybe surviving on Earth required us to protect each other. He said slowly, you don't make it through ice ages and predators alone. You need the group. So maybe we learned that some things are worth dying for, because without that the group fails. The 3 guardians exchanged looks. Cinder nodded slightly. That is the theory we have developed. Slate said. Death world conditions created a species with strong protective instincts, not in spite of the danger, but because of it. You learned that individual survival means nothing if the community dies, but this is theory, Frost added. What happened at Crest Point is evidence. You had no cultural requirement to save Pyrrha, no social pressure, no audience judging your actions, yet you moved to protect her instantly. I couldn't just watch a kid die, Daniel said. It was the simplest truth he had. Why not? Cinder asked, not challenging, genuinely curious. You didn't know her. She wasn't your species. You had no obligation, legal or moral, to intervene. You could have hidden and lived, yet you chose death instead. Why? Daniel struggled to articulate what felt obvious. Because she was scared and alone, and those men were going to kill her. What kind of person just watches that happen? Most beings in the galaxy, Slate said quietly. We have record from Crest Point. 247 individuals were in that market when the attack began. 246 ran or hid. You were the only one who moved toward the danger. The number hit Daniel harder than expected. He'd been so focused on Pyrrha that he hadn't registered the crowd disappearing. Everyone else chose survival. Only he chose sacrifice. This is the human variable we want to understand, Frost said. Your species should not produce guardians naturally, yet you do. We have studied human history extensively. Your wars are brutal, yes, but even in your darkest conflicts, humans perform acts of stunning selflessness. Cinder pulled up a holographic display. Images scrolled past. Humans throughout history throwing themselves on grenades, running into burning buildings, diving into dangerous waters to save drowning strangers, shielding others from gunfire with their own bodies. These are not isolated incidents, Cinder said. This is a pattern that repeats across your entire species history. Humans sacrifice themselves for strangers with disturbing frequency. Disturbing? Daniel asked. From a survival standpoint, yes. Every one of these actions reduces genetic fitness, removes that individual from a gene pool. Logic suggests that such traits should be selected against, yet they persist. Slate stood walking around his pedestal. We believe that Earth created something unique, a species with protective instincts so strong that they override individual survival programming. You're saying we can't help it. We are saying that guardianship may be inherent to humanity in ways it is not for other species, Frost said. For dragons it is learned behavior, reinforced by culture. For humans it appears to be instinct. Daniel looked at his hands, remembering them spreading wide to shield Pyro. He hadn't thought, hadn't calculated odds, just moved like his body knew what to do before his brain processed the situation. If this is true, he said slowly, if humans just naturally protect others, why is me doing it special? Shouldn't any human have done the same? Perhaps, Slate said. But you were the one present. You were the one who moved, and your action has created an opportunity to understand something fundamental about the nature of guardianship itself. What opportunity? To see if human instinct can be refined through dragon training, Cinder said. To discover if your natural protective drive combined with our combat techniques and tactical knowledge creates something greater than either alone. Frost added, we want to know if guardianship is about culture or nature. You represent the test case. A human with no cultural framework but strong instinct being offered the same training and position we give our finest warriors. And if I fail, then we learn that culture is essential, Slate said, but if you succeed, if you can bear the weight of guardianship despite your different background, then we learn something profound about what makes a guardian. Daniel stood silent, processing. He was not just being offered a position, he was being asked to prove something about humanity itself, about whether protection was taught or inherent, whether his species' death world origins created guardians naturally. I'm just a freight hauler, he said finally. You were a freight hauler, Slade corrected. Now you're the being who took 5 blades for a dragon child. That action revealed your nature. What happens next will reveal your potential. Dawn painted the citadel in shades of gold and amber. Daniel stood in the preparation chamber, wearing simple white robes that reminded him of hospital clothing. His scars were visible through the thin fabric, 5 pink lines across his chest, abdomen, shoulder, and thigh, permanent reminders of the market at Crest Point. Strand entered carrying a ceremonial basin. The marking ink, she explained, it will be applied to your scars during the oath ceremony. Dragon script that translates to willing shield. Can I refuse? Daniel asked, not because he wanted to, but because he needed to know. Of course. Guardianship cannot be forced. It must be chosen freely, or it means nothing. Strand set the basin down. But I do not think you will refuse. Why? Because you're the kind of being who moves towards scared children instead of away from them. That nature does not change simply because the stakes are higher. She was right. Daniel had spent 3 days thinking about the council's offer, walking the archives, talking with Wave about what guardianship truly meant. Every logical part of his brain argued for refusal. He was untrained, unprepared, likely to die quickly if called to serve, but he kept seeing Pyrrha's face, kept remembering her terror, kept feeling that moment when his body moved before his mind caught up. I'll do it, he said. Strand smiled. I know, KME, they are waiting. The ceremony was held in the Grand Plaza, massive courtyard at the Citadel's heart. Thousands of dragons filled the space, wings folded, eyes focused forward. Daniel walked through the crowd, with Strand feeling the weight of their attention. This was being broadcast across dragon territory. Strand had mentioned millions watching a human accept an honor no non-dragon had ever received. The memorial flame burned at the plaza's center, larger than the one in the archives. The 7 Guardian Council members stood in a semicircle around it. Slate stepped forward as Daniel approached. Daniel Reed, his voice carried across the plaza without amplification. You stand before the memorial flame where 25 guardians are honored in death and 7 servant life. You have been offered the rank of guardian, the highest honor our civilization bestows. Do you accept this burden? I do, Daniel said. His voice sounded small after Slate's, but it carried clearly enough. Then kneel, Slate commanded. Daniel knelt on the smooth stone. Slate lifted the ceremonial basin Strand had brought. These scars mark your sacrifice. They will now mark your oath. The ink was warm, almost hot. Slate carefully traced each scar with dragon script, speaking the words aloud in both dragon tongue and human standard. Willing shield, one who stands between, one who chooses sacrifice, one who protects the innocent. When all 5 scars were marked, Slate stepped back. Speak your oath, Daniel Reed. Bind yourself to guardianship or walk away freely. The choice is yours alone. Daniel looked at the flames, at the names of fallen Guardians written in light, he thought. About Shield, who died by time for Pyrrha. To escape, about Wave, who trained 20 years to earn this rank. About the 25, who never retired, who fell in service. I swear he began the words coming from somewhere deep, to stand between danger and innocence, to choose protection over survival, to serve the dragon people in. They're young until death claims me or duty releases me. I'm a guardian from this moment until my last. The plaza erupted in dragon song, a harmonic roar that shook the air. Slate nodded once, then gestured. Pyrrha emerged from the crowd carrying a bundle wrapped in silver cloth. Your armor, she said, holding it up to Daniel, forged specifically for human form. The metals came from Earth, sent by your diplomatic corps when they heard of your sacrifice. Daniel unwrapped the bundle. The armor was lighter than he expected, designed for mobility, human-sized, human-shaped, but crafted with dragon techniques. Blue-gray plates that caught the light like scales. He stood and began putting it on with Pyrrha's help. Each piece fit perfectly, the armor conforming to his body like it was alive. When the last piece clicked into place, Slate spoke again. Guardianship is not granted lightly, nor accepted easily. Tradition demands that each new guardian be tested by those who already hold the rank. You will face each of us. In turn, we do not expect you to win. We expect you to demonstrate why you are worthy. Wave stepped forward first. She was the youngest guardian, the one who had shown Daniel the archives. I will be your first test. She drew no weapon. Neither did Daniel. This was clearly meant to be unarmed combat. The crowd formed a wide circle. Pyro retreated to safety. Wave settled into a fighting stance that Daniel recognized from basic training. Weight balanced, hands ready. Begin, Slate commanded. Wave moved like lightning. Daniel barely registered her approach before she was inside his guard. He tried to counter, but she redirected his movement and swept his legs. He hit the ground hard again. Wave said. Daniel stood. They circled each other. He lasted longer this time, maybe 10 seconds, before she locked his arm and forced him down again. 5 more attempts, 5 more failures, but Daniel noticed something. He was learning her patterns, seeing openings even if he lacked the skill to exploit them. Wave noticed too. Her eyes showed approval. That on a 7th attempt, Daniel managed a solid defensive position that held for almost 40 seconds before Wave broke through. Enough, she said, helping him defeat. You learn quickly. You do not quit. You are worthy. The crowd sang approval. Wave stepped back and Daniel faced the remaining guardians. Each test was similar. He lost every single time. But he never quit, never stopped trying, never let failure break his determination. That be why the time he faced Slate, Daniel was exhausted and bruised. The commander studied him for a long moment. You understand now, Slate said. Guardianship is not about winning. It is about standing despite knowing you will fall. Yes, Daniel managed. Slate nodded. Then you are truly one of us. The ceremony concluded with Daniel standing before the memorial flame as the newest guardian. 38 names now connected to this rank. He's the only human among them. Pyrrha approached as the crowd began to disperse. Will you teach me? She asked quietly. Teach you what? To be brave like you. Daniel looked down at the small dragon who nearly died because he'd been in the right place at the right time. I'm not Brave, I was just there. Being there is enough. Pyrrhus said, you taught me that. When someone needs help, being there is everything. Ships arrived throughout the day, delegations from across the galaxy coming to see the human guardian. News had spread that Daniel's action had done more for human-dragon relations than decades of formal diplomacy. One impulsive choice in a market had outward changing how entire civilizations viewed humanity. That evening, Daniel stood on the citadel walls beside Slate, watching the stars appear overhead. Do you regret accepting? Slate asked. Daniel touched his scars through the armor. 5 lines, 5 blades, 5 choices to stay standing when falling would have been easier. No, he said, I regret nothing. Good, Slate said, because guardianship is just